Now, I don't want to sound like the Grinch that stole Christmas, but we've already been hit this November with quite a high fuel increase, particularly for diesel, over R1.40 a litre. Festive season is looming, and costs always go up during the festive season. Whether we're going on holiday or want to treat our families, just enjoy a nice meal, it's getting more and more difficult to afford those costs. It could be a bleak Christmas for many families, sadly. Annaline van der Poel, Chief Operating Officer, Debt Rescue SA, joins me now. Annaline, this is not a very pretty picture, but we had quite a steep increase in the price of fuel, particularly diesel, already. Do you think we're heading for another come December?
Yeah, it looks pretty much like it's on the cards at this point. We know that in the last few days, government has put out their predictions for what we could potentially be looking at for December, and the right now predictions, and obviously they can change. It's still very early in the month, but we're looking at about R1.20, I think it was, for petrol, and about 60 cents for diesel again. So most definitely we are looking at further increases, very, very likely, unless we have major currency valuation or strengthening, or perhaps the oil price dropping dramatically.
And of course, there's such a knock-on effect. As soon as fuel goes up, it just impacts everything. And I would imagine it's particularly dire if you're also traveling during the festive month.
Indeed. I mean, we've got, again, the direct and the indirect impact, because in the direct impact, generally we're going to feel it in our pockets when we go and fill up our vehicles, or we make use of any form of transport. And generally, most people, and especially after the pandemic, most people, did not travel as much. And I think many are looking forward to be able to, return back to normal and travel and see the country and visit relatives and family. And we're going to feel it in our pockets in the end of the day. But of course, we've got the indirect impact as well, because as we know, the bulk of our goods are transported by road in South Africa. And so by default, with the diesel price having gone up as much as it has, recently, and might continue to, we're going to feel it on the price of the goods that we purchase.
Yeah, and we know that food has gone up. I think it's about 14% compared to this time last year. I mean, I would imagine that's going to be a key knock-on, particularly as we head into the festive season.
Indeed. I mean, right now we've done so much research to try and get a feel of what consumers are saying out there, and we've looked at what PMB, EJD are saying they're seeing in terms of prices. We know South Africans have this year really, really felt the brunt of the impact of food prices increasing as much as they have. People have had to change their shopping habits, the brands they buy, how they buy, where they buy, what they buy. We've seen people are even, removing the frequency of meat and replacing it with grains, for example, to make a meal stretch. So people have already made massive changes, but prices just keep increasing, and it's having a huge impact on their budgets monthly.
What do you think it's going to do to the holiday season, where people do tend to like to travel, and also after the years of lockdown, people are desperate to get out and about? What are you anticipating in terms of what consumers are going to be able to do over the festive period?
Well, I don't really think people are going to make too many changes in terms of whether they'll go or not. But I do believe, just a lot of it can still be done, as long as it's just done with a lot of planning. I think planning, setting out your budget, knowing what you're prepared and can afford to spend on, for example, travel and accommodation or food, knowing that the festive season generally also involves a lot more planning around, get-togethers, food and the likes. If we plan, if we put a lot of thought, and we make sure we do the necessary checks and correct where we need to, I do think it's still going to happen. I just think with a lot of planning this year.
Do you think that government should be doing more, that retailers should be doing more to control prices? There's been a lot of talk about zero rating more foods in terms of VAT costs. Do you see it getting that dire that we really have to be looking at direct government intervention?
Look, it's a possibility. It's definitely a possibility. But we also know that obviously the government has got its own budgetary constraints, as we had our budget speech a few weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, where we also heard about, government has also only got so much money. So writing off potential revenue is going to be a very difficult decision for government to make. And from the retailer's perspective, I mean, I know that also we've seen that there's commissions busy investigating to see if prices are being reduced in line with, for example, if the costs are coming down, because we did see some fuel price reductions a couple of months ago, though it's now going back up again. So I do think, obviously everybody's got to come to the party and realize how absolutely difficult it is going out there for consumers right now. And make sure that when the fuel price reduces, if that's the reason why you put the prices up originally, that you're going to be bringing them down accordingly when the fuel price does go down.
Are you having more people asking for debt assistance? Is it really spiking more than ever before?
It really is. The last couple of months, we've seen dramatic increase in consumers who are clearly struggling, who are needing help because they're having to make very difficult decisions right now between, do I pay for my debt or do I put food on the table? Or if I do pay for my debt and I do put food on my table, how am I funding that? We're seeing cases of people having to turn to credit to buy food, whether it's an existing facility or looking at payday loans. We know a couple of months ago already, one of our major banks told us that most consumers' paychecks are gone within 5 days of it landing in the bank, which means there's no money left for the rest of the month. And they're having to turn to credit to put food on the table. So it's definitely, it's getting very, very, very difficult out there, especially now with this time of the year approaching.
All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting to us. Annaline van Poel, Chief Operating Officer at Debt Rescue.